Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our engine opening series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are going to take a look at some very interesting Najdorf games that were played in the TCEC Season 23 Chess Bonus. Chess Bonus, what is that? That was the tournament where Leela, Komodo and Stockfish, the top three engines, took on all the other engines from the starting position. Some of the engines chose the Berlin as black, 1e4, e5, but some chose the Najdorf, and well, this led to a number of fascinating games. And we're going to have a look at a few different variations that were played in there. Now, this was a particularly interesting one because it was also played in a key game, Nepomniachtchi against Firouzja in the 2022 Madrid Candidates, and well, probably quite an important game for the tournament as a whole. So how does this variation come about? Well, let's have a look, shall we? It's e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, a6, bishop e3, and now e5. This was my favourite line as a professional. Yeah, I also played knight g4, which is still very, very interesting indeed. And, well, Kasparov was famed for his handling of the e6 lines. Although nowadays the engines, well, seem to feel that this is really not the best move. They always want to play e7 to e5. It's a pretty good idea. Ooh, something happening at the TCEC there. It's a pretty good idea, really. I mean, it stops white from playing e4 to e5, which is always the key disruptive Sicilian move. Grabs some space in the centre, f4, d4 squares, and this square on d5 is a weakness, but it's possible to cover it quite well. It's I mean, I think nowadays also in elite chess, it's definitely the main line. So knight b3, bishop b7, f3, bishop e6, queen d2, and now a very important moment, castles. And you know, from around 1998 onwards, I got hooked on the idea of stopping g4 with h5, and I have to say it improved the quality of my life in these bishop e3 Najdorfs enormously. Yeah, I mean, I drew with Liko and Vichy, and had much the better of both those games, and won a very nice game against Morozevich as well, and always felt, you know, really happy whenever I played this as black. And in actual fact, you know, this line has been recommended in a number of books and courses, most notably Anish Giri's for Chessable recently. So yeah, I mean, h5 is a pretty good move, but castles is pretty decent, and well, you've got some players who like to play this. Vachil Agrave, for example, is one example of a player who plays this line quite often. So castles, knight bd7, g4 and b5, and basically battle is joined. Black's giving white a free hand to play g5 and disrupt its kingside pieces. At the same time, we get the move b4 to disrupt white's knight on c3. So yeah, obviously it's, you know, it's very, very sharp. So g5 played, and now b4. We'll have a look maybe at another line, which is knight h5, which was recently tested at the Sinkfield Cup between Fabiano Caruana and Maxime Vachil Agrave, and Fabiano won an excellent game there as white. We also saw in the chess bonus, we saw games of Leela's against Black Marlin and Halogen, and also a great win from Stockfish against Halogen in this line. So the engines definitely have something to say about it. Obviously, you know, playing knight h5, it's less sharp than this line, which was Mr. Bob's favourite at the TCEC, and also was Alireza Firouzja's choice as well. So knight e2 and knight e8. So just a quick stop here to point out that something like queen takes b4, I mean, it's rarely a good idea for white, or, you know, it needs a lot of preparation to be good. I mean, the basic problem is that the pawn on g5 is hanging, and actually this queen always ends up being a target for stuff, either d5 or actually in this case a5, when well, you're threatening a5 to a4, and if you get in the way, then we go bishop g5. So taking the pawn on b4, never a good idea for white in general, but f4 has been the really sharp idea. And after a5 we go f5, attacking this bishop on e6. And yeah, you know, the funny thing is that actually I only came across this specific line a few years ago, and the only black continuation I knew, which I'd seen in a book by Pavlovich in the modernized Najdorf, the only line I knew was A4. And yeah, I mean that was so when I saw Alireza play bishop c4 against Ian Nepomniachtchi at the 2022 candidates, I thought, oh, is this maybe a new move? But actually, you know, looking up the the position in the database, it turned out to be the old move, you know, more than 70 correspondence games in this line, and presumably the move that people played before they realized they could give a4 a go. So now it gets quite interesting. Leela and Stockfish against Mr. Bob at the TCEC season 23 both played knight g3, and that's the move that I want to have a look at first of all, because it's the main move. What Ian Nepomniachtchi did was play king b1, which I think really surprised Alireza. In any case, he went wrong quite quickly afterwards. It's one of those moves, actually, king b1, that's I think is less good than knight g3 as played by Leela and Stockfish. And you know, the engine seems to give plenty of ways in which black can achieve equality, but all of them just, you know, feel very, very risky to human eyes. So yeah, if you're surprised in them, probably quite a nasty little surprise. So, you know, that was probably a very nice psychological choice from Ian Nepomniachtchi. But knight g3 is the sharpest and the most challenging. I mean, essentially, you're challenging this this bishop on c4 already. Once this bishop on c4 gets exchanged, then d6 to d5 from black is going to be very hard to achieve, and that just means that all of these black minor pieces are really, you know, bunched up, don't have much scope, and on top of that, they're also vulnerable to a break like f6. So intuitively, you know, I'm just thinking, wow, you know, this must be really, really good for white. But there is a slight catch, because after bishop f1, rook f1, we can play a4, haha, and the only option that white has got is knight a1. So well worth you know, thinking about this this position a little. You know, it kind of feels like a chess 960 game where white had a corner knight and didn't get stuff developed, but actually this is kind of the culmination of the king's knights grand tour, f3 d4 b3 a1, which is a little bit tragic, really. I mean, you know, of course that knight is awful, it contributes absolutely nothing to play on the king side, but yeah, I mean, it's not completely useless because it's doing a decent job defending. I mean, it's helping to hold back b4 to b3, and it's also defending this pawn on c2 in front of the white king. And in actual fact, you know, after a move like b3, I mean, you know, b takes a2 isn't even a threat because the knight on a1 is stopping the pawn from queening. So you do get the idea that this knight is performing a useful task from that point of view. And, you know, I mean, if you look at the firepower that white has got on the king side, well, we're talking about, you know, a knight on g3, a bishop on e3, queen on d2, rook on f1, pawns on f5 and g5, an h-pawn that can join the game. You know, although black's got an extra minor piece in play, as it were, you know, it doesn't really feel as if white's short of firepower compared to black's defensive power. I mean, you know, and also, of course, you know, you could always imagine that in some way this knight gets into play somehow. It's not that easy for black to keep it out of play forever. So, yeah, I mean, in general, you know, if you had to ask me who would you rather play, I mean, I'd rather play white. I think mainly as well because of the weak light squares, you know, in the centre, this d5 square, for example. You could just imagine things going wrong for black and white just ending up with a knight on d5 and, you know, a great position. Whereas it's not really quite as obvious to see how things could go wrong for white. But in actual fact, you know, well, actually it's quite interesting that, you know, the engines, they always start off with quite a high evaluation for white, you know, something like plus 0.99, plus 1.0 from Stockfish. But as time goes by, yeah, the evaluation drops to something like, you know, 0.2, 0.3. So I think it shows the complexity of the situation, but also, you know, the resources that black has. And yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting here to see what the engines came up with, because yeah, I mean, I think, you know, yeah, to come up with what they came up with. I mean, we're not talking, I think, in terms of hours of effort for me. We're talking in terms of days or weeks. So yeah, because I mean, really, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's actually very hard to understand what black should do in this position. I suppose, you know, one of the key things to think about for black, first of all, is whether to throw in this move a3, b3. And this comes back lots and lots of times, and it seems that in actual fact, you know, this move a3 b3, it's irresistible both for elite humans like Alireza, who did it against Ian Nepomniachtchi, and also for lesser engines, because Mr. Bob did it twice against Leela and Stockfish. In actual fact, you know, Leela, Stockfish, Komodo, they all really avoid playing this move. You know, why is a3 b3 tempting? Well, in some way, and I can't really explain why, it feels like it really hems in this knight on a1 even more. You know, I mean, that's just intuitively, it feels that way to me. The other thing is, of course, is that, you know, you're creating this weak square on c3, so, you know, you sort of feel, well, you know, if white starts doing something attacking, I don't know, moving the queen away from there, then we've already got our weakness to invade on. Just feels like, you know, you'll always have to do this at some stage, and, well, you might as well do it immediately. The big problem with it, in actual fact, is that yeah, actually it doesn't actually hem in this knight on a1. It makes it easier for it to escape, and also the fact that white's controlling this this c4 square is incredibly useful, because actually you notice just how much black makes use of that square, you know, even for something like knight b6 to c4, but also after sacrifices like d5, knight d6, knight c4, having access to that c4 square is really useful for black. And you know, as soon as you play a3 b3, the engines go from you know, approximate equality to more than +1 evaluations. And you know, yeah, I mean, this is just really really very difficult. I mean, let's have a look what happened with Mr. Bob. I think it was against Leela in this way. So king h8 played, h4, rook c8. We'll you know, look at those moves, some moves in a little bit more detail later, but king b1, knight c7, and this was Mr. Bob's choice, a novelty in actual fact over an earlier correspondence game. And now the move c4 was played, and after b takes c3, this is really key. It's not queen takes c3 when knight b5 happens. It's this move queen d3, stopping the knight from coming to b5. And actually, you know, if you have a look at the other pieces, for example, yeah, I mean, the knight can't come to b6 either because it's covered by the bishop. And after knight e8, not a great move, putting the knight back where it was, but okay. We played knight c2, and there we are. Actually, you can see that this knight on a1 has got beautifully developed to c2. It's attacking the pawn on a3, and the other move that's coming in is knight e2 to c3 to d5. And I think what's very noticeable about this is that as soon as you go this move, play this move a3, white no longer feels the need to do anything on the king side. You just leave the king side as it is, taking enormous amounts of space, taking the f6 square away from the pieces, and then you just play on the queen side. You know, it's that theme that I mentioned, discussing a whole chapter in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, invading through the channels that the opponent has opened. And here, you know, just this inclusion of this move a3 b3, it just gives white the opportunity to leave the king side as it is, hold that on advantage, don't try and increase it, and then just come in through the queen side and center. So yeah, this was a pretty bad experience for Mr. Bob, and yeah, you know, there's nobody better than Leela at squeezing the life out of a position. So I mean, that's one interesting thing from Black's perspective here, that you don't want to play a3 b3 too early. Remember, of course, you know, that that b4 isn't hanging because g5 is weak. So what my engines recommended was the move king h8, and I think that Mr. Bob also did this against Stockfish later. So it played a3 b3 against Leela once, but Mr. Bob also played king h8, and this is supposed to be the best move. And to be honest, yeah, I mean, the next white move that happened was f6. And I mean, that's fair enough, nice attacking Sicilian move, but I just couldn't understand, you know, what on earth is black doing with king h8? You know, why can't white simply play the move h4, defend the g5 pawn? I mean, I'm also threatening to take the pawn on b4 sometime, though, you know, you have to watch out for a move like d5. But I mean, I'm just going to line up on the king side and just increase. And what are you doing here? You know, what on earth is your plan? And, well, the amazing thing, you know, that Leela and Komodo Dragon and Stockfish were coming up with was this move, rook g8. And if any of you play shogi, then you'll probably have a wry smile of recognition when I talk about this Anaguma castle, because there's a very famous castle in shogi where you you know, put your king in the corner and then surround it with your pieces. And this feels very much like what black is doing. What on earth is the point of this? Well, the idea is that white's idea is actually to play well, let's have a look. If we play another move, like for example rook b8 here, then white is actually just going to play f6 takes and knight f5. Now, yeah, I mean, obviously f takes g5, h takes g5 just opens the h file for white. Yeah, we're attacking the bishop on e7, so that's keeping the queen on d8 tied down. And if you move the rook to g8, for example, to play the move bishop f8 to try and escape, we've just got this move knight h6, which is incredibly powerful. Because after a move like rook f8 or rook g7 even, we've got queen d5, and then we've got knight takes f7 coming in. So you're probably going to start to understand, you know, why does black then need to play the move rook g8? Well, the idea is that if white plays the move f6, then we just go takes there and bishop f8. And, well, the rook is, I mean, out of the way, and also, you know, dealing with any pressure that white might develop on the g file, also covering this, you know, weak g7 square. Weak g7 square. The bishop on f8 is covering h6. That's very important. So knight h6 is not possible. It's also away now from the attack of the knight, so this queen is able to move. So actually, this is a beautiful way of, within a very restricted space, of reorganizing black's pieces. And it just seems to work very well. I mean, this was, it's not, you know, again, you know, from a human perspective, this doesn't feel like completely obvious that this is fine for black. But actually here, black's just threatening to chase the queen away. Queen b7, queen c8, takes queen b5. And, you know, here the engines are actually agreeing a draw. I mean, like, this is really sharp in a human context. So, you know, it's not like a clear draw or anything, but the engines do consider this position balanced. And yeah, I mean, it's all down to this defensive structure, bishop f8, which is, you know, really interesting. And again, you know, I mean, I was really struggling to understand anything like that. Other interesting thing, for example, you could go play a move like queen d5, and then I can play the move f6. And if you go g6, then I can go h6. And guess what? If you try and line up against the h6 pawn, I can play the bishop to f8 and cover it this way. So again, this move king h8, rook g8 is just you know, a beautiful way of organizing yourself. And yeah, I mean, yeah, just everything, you know, everything just really seems to work there. Also, you know, after rook g8, if I go queen takes b4, then d5 is obviously the move you want to play. Yeah, the pawn on g5 is defended by the pawn on h4, so you'd have thought this would be okay for white. But actually, both Komodo and Stockfish are saying plus 6 for black. So just considering that, yeah, the counterattack that black's going to get is huge. And actually, of course, you know, with this pawn on d4, you're threatening knight d6, knight c5. You've got the A and B files. And yeah, you know, how are you going to get at the black king? It's not so obvious anymore. There's a lot of safety in this maneuver. So yeah, you know, this move king h8, rook g8 is an absolutely amazing one, and it explains, and that's what I really couldn't understand originally, why white plays f6. Because after f6 gf6, white plays knight f5. This is what Stockfish did against. Oh no, sorry, this is the Leela game. The previous one was the Stockfish game. So this is what Leela did, knight f5. So the idea is, of course, that if rook g8 now, we've got knight h6. But the key thing that black has got is to go f takes g5. Just destroying those pawns. However, what white has got in return is this move queen takes b4. And yeah, well, you'll notice the difference. d5 isn't possible because of queen takes e7. And you know, this is a very typical thing of engine play, and you know, I never tire of commenting on it, because you know, I mean, just look at this position like a few moves ago. You're saying, well, I tell you one thing, white's definitely going to be attacking on the king side, and black's definitely going to be attacking on the queen side. You know, a move like king h8 basically forces out immediate action from white, and hey presto, all of a sudden it's white that that is actually taking action on the queen side. Well, you know, action on the king side, black's actually destroyed most of white's pawn barrier there. So the game has kind of shifted completely, and yeah, I mean, this is something that you see a lot in engine games, and this is always, to be honest, the stuff that costs me a lot of time to understand when analysing engine games, because I think, you know, as human players, you do. Yeah, I mean, there's a limited amount that you can take in, really, and you sort of, you know, get used to the idea of, okay, I'm building up strength here, so I'll attack there. But with engines, it's always flexible, and, you know, things are always changing. And, you know, what I liked very much as well was that I would have said, you know, in this position that there were not yet any real concrete lines, you know, apart from is f6 going to mate black or not. But it turns out that this move, king h8, is a very concrete line. You know, h4, rook g8, black is safe. So actually it forces white to play this move f6. It's actually a very concrete variation. And after knight f5, you know, black is forced to play f takes g5 before white manages to get the move h4 in, you know, solidifying that structure, which is actually what happened between Leela against Mr. Bob, and then knight h6 after, if black ever plays rook g8. So, you know, quite amazing to see how concrete lines are. And this is what you really get from analysing with engines. You know, in human players, you wouldn't, you know, it would take you a very long time to realise that actually there's a very precise sequence of moves at that point. The interesting thing is now, you know, who is better here and why? And again, you know, I mean, if you ask me intuitively, I'd still say, you know, well, white must be quite a bit better. I mean, getting rid of this b pawn, this gives me the feeling that I can activate my knight somehow into d5. I mean, look at that wrecked black king side. You know, I mean, surely I must be a lot better, and it's actually quite interesting because you know, I ran what I did was I ran some engine games, not between Stockfish and Komodo Dragon, because they just find, you know, excellent ways to play, but between an older engine, so Revenge 1.0, we're up to 3.0. But I gave Revenge 1.0 black against Stockfish, and in this position, I mean, you know, within 5 or 6 moves, it was ending up in a completely lost position. So a3, rook b8, knight g7, queen d2, and Stockfish was already at +4 with the, you know, a massive pin coming in, and obviously had anticipated all the horrible things that would happen to black. And you know, that was really, really quick. To be honest, pretty much as I think things would go if I had to play this position from scratch without analysis. Funnily enough, after I gave Revenge Stockfish's move, and also Komodo and Leela's move, which is g4, then Revenge managed to draw as black against Stockfish. So I think, you know, it often shows that you know, there's somewhere there are key moves sometimes, and but they're not often moves that you could easily guess. You know, and the difference between knowing that move and not knowing that move is tremendously important. What is the idea of g4? Well, it's actually carrying on that shift, that turnaround that we talked about before, because actually what black is trying to do is not to do anything on the queen side, but black is going to try and get footholds for its pieces on the king side. And well, you can have a look at the main line here. Ran many games. It'll be in the PGN there, so you don't need to worry about writing all this down. Rook there, so yeah, I mean, queen takes a3 is possible. After that, yeah, black's a little more active, white's a little more passive. I mean, this was a game where Stockfish and Komodo Dragon agreed a draw because it's obviously 0.00. Yeah, I mean, it's a total mess in human terms. So I mean, actually, you know, got to say this very strongly that, you know, I think these positions are absolutely wonderful for playing for both sides. I mean, black players, white players, you know, very rich positions to play, and yeah, the equal positions that we're reaching are total messes for human players. So Queen A4, Knight C5. And now knight e6, and then there was the next move. Next couple of moves really made me laugh and made me happy, because here and then bishop f4, and well, this is a lovely move, this bishop f4, because what it's doing, it's freeing the black queen to come to g5 to h4, and you're really going to see that black's launching a kingside counterattack now. That's going to try and take pawns and move the pawns on, and play moves like f5 and whatever. And I mean, it's really, whereas white in actual fact is going to try and move the C and B pawns on. It really shows the complete turning around of the position from an early white kingside attack to now white's on the queen side. And well, this was you know, one of these games that was played, and actually here Komodo Dragon and Stockfish agreed to draw by repetition. They thought that this position was equal. I mean, to me, it's totally unfathomable. So you know, it's one of those things. But yeah, you know, I mean, in principle, the engines consider there to be balanced. So yeah, I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing to see. So that's, you know, very interesting. I guess these were the types of lines that that Alireza had looked at in great detail. Well, I certainly hope so for his sake, because you're not going to guess, you know, king h8 and after h4 rook g8 just like that. Yeah, as I said, for me it would be a question of weeks, I think, and probably reflection after fruitless attempts to try and make something active, to suddenly realize, well, wait a minute, you know, don't I have a bit more time than I think? Just have also maybe a little quick look at what Ian Nepomniachtchi did in the game, which was king b1. So yeah, I mean, you know, the advantage of that for white is that the knight comes back to c1, so you know, that feels nicer. And again, you know, I think that if you're slightly surprised by this line as white, then playing a move where your pieces are placed naturally rather than unnaturally on a1, it's a very, very good idea. But what it does give black the opportunity is to play this move d5, very typical Sicilian break. Because the bishop is there on c4, we can play d5, and the idea is after ed we go knight d6, and all of a sudden the pieces are looking great and active. So what did Ian do? Well, there's plenty of lines. I mean, e takes d6, e takes d5 rather, has been played quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, normally we're transposing after knight d6. Must be said here that Leela, as the only engine, chose a different path, which actually looked quite good. Just f6, stopping white from playing f6, and after knight g3, just took, and went knight d6. g6, queen c7, and yeah, you know, I mean, this after queen g2, yeah, even played h6 here, and knight e4, rook fc8. The bishop can protect the pawn in h6 if necessary, and we've got some nice pressure down here with who knows, some breaks. Yeah, seemed like a very nice plan to me from Leela there. You know, without allowing white to get all risky. But you know, Ian in the game played f6, which I think again was a very nice challenging move. G takes f6, and now G takes f6 from Ian as well. Knight g3. Knight d6, knight f5 came up in a number of my engine games. I think it was actually the main line for both Stockfish and the other engines. And yeah, we got this quite engine-y type of thing. Queen takes d5, obviously very nice, not breaking up the black centre. We're looking for queen d7. We've got rook f1, and then bishop h3, queen f3, picking up the bishop, but it's an extra piece, so we don't mind. h3, queen h3, ab, knight b3, queen c8. And to be honest, you know, yeah, unless I knew this really well as black, you know, yeah, I would feel quite nervous during a game. You know, I mean, you know, you're a Najdorf player, so I've played enough positions a bit like this, but still, you know, I mean, playing against a very strong player, if you don't know this line, then yeah, you're going to be very unsure of what you have to do. And this is kind of the problem, really, of these lines for black, is that every single time I look at them, I sort of say, yeah, well, yeah, I haven't done anything wrong as black. I mean, I can feel that, so I'm probably okay, but still, I just see risk and danger in every single line. So g takes f6, knight df6, and then knight g3 was played by Jan. I wonder how, you know, how well he knew this this line. I mean, one of Stockfish's move is knight d4 in this position, which is a bit of a stunner. And only Leela was brave enough to take on d4, and well, it didn't work out too well. Here takes on d4. Obviously, yeah, we've got e5 coming in, so b3 takes, queen h6 played. I mean, we've got all this defense here. I mean, it's not clear exactly how white's going to break through, but obviously it's very scary. And well, queen d6 was played, e5, queen e6, so we let a pawn come to f6, but we block. And well, actually, somewhere around here, oh sorry, it was b takes c2, check first, queen e6 takes, and somewhere around here Leela played bishop b4, and all of a sudden Stockfish played king b1 and played the king to a1 into relative safety, and after that Stockfish just saw that it was you know, +1 and winning. So yeah, you know, again, I think knight d4 would have been a bit of a stunner there, I have to say. But Jan's move knight g3 was very, very sensible, and I mean, I suspect that Jan sort of knew some lines and you know, but kind of went for the, you know, for the real human stuff. And yeah, I mean, there's just nothing wrong with this move. The knight's aiming for f5, and we're offering the exchange of bishops. And here I think, yeah, Alireza started to go quite wrong. He played the move bishop f1, which feels a little bit funny because, after all, I mean, bishop takes c4. You know, maybe not the necessarily the hugest threat you could think of. King h8 was what the engines were playing, especially Leela, and actually, yeah, Stockfish and was often going for this line. Which you know, was turning out to be drawn. Although, you know, I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, certainly as a human player, if you're making this up as you go along, you're not always going to know that this position is perfectly fine with, you know, with all these weak dark squares around the king. But yeah, it does actually turn out to be all right for black. Yeah, I mean, another more natural move, I think, from the black point of view, is this move knight d6, not taking on f1, not developing the rook on h1, and this has been played a number of times in correspondence. And well, this was the more or less the main line that I was getting with Stockfish and Leela. Bishop c4 was played once, but queen g5 was a common move, threatening queen g7, checkmate. So rook g8, queen e5, rook a5. Bishop f4, rook e8. I mean, it's like a total mess, right? I mean, it's really very, very unclear. But you know, all the engines were thinking that this was a 0-0 position, so you know, absolutely tenable for black. But again, you know, I'm sort of thinking, if you didn't know this well, and if Jan knew a few things about it, then I think this was probably a very awkward choice for Alireza over the board. So, I mean, actually, just show this game of Alireza. Bishop f1, rook f1, a3 was played, b3. So you can see again, Alireza couldn't resist playing b3, just like Mr. Bob. Yeah, here, what do we get? How did the Alireza game go? Sorry, I'm looking at all my analysis here. Oh, it carried on for a little while. We got king h8. E takes d5, knight d6, and this seems like the final big mistake, really, because after knight d6, white took on b4, and actually there was just no good discovered attack. So the engines just seemed to think, oh, you've just lost your pawn on b4, and by the way, your whole kingside structure is ruined here as well. There's a weak square on f5, everything. Pawn on e5 is weak as well. So that was the really big mistake. I mean, what the engines were trying to do, instead of king h8, they were playing queen c7. E takes d5, king h8, so it could transpose. And then there was this very long, complicated line that the engines were going into. Where, you know, I mean, this is clearly you'd much rather be white here. I mean, you know, white's clearly the one attacking. You've got d6 to d7. You've got all sorts of ideas where you say, oh, you know, couldn't I even attack the black king here somehow? So queen d7, queen d5, and then this was the Stockfish special, because Leela tried defending it in this way, which, to be honest, you know, looks completely reasonable as well, f5, but quite counter-attacking, but actually ended up getting just getting nowhere here. E4, rook d4, and Stockfish kept control, although, you know, it looks extraordinarily complicated to me. Stockfish played it much more cleverly. We just go back a little bit. Played the move knight f6, and just actually forcing the exchange of queens, and then taking off the bishop, and then, well, basically, you know, pinning the white king to the corner. Black's got open files to the rooks. The d pawn's strong, but you're not going to be able to push it through just with only a rook and a knight supporting it. So, yeah, I mean, Stockfish managed to hold this just by, well, irritating these knights and keeping on attacking. So, yeah, again, you know, just one of those positions that Stockfish defends better than anyone else. Yeah, you know, I mean, I thought that was really interesting, and, you know, a lot of different little points in there. I mean, first of all, I found this line very interesting. Nice to see Mr. Bob choosing it, and great minds thinking alike, that Alireza also did the same. I thought it was a very clever decision from Jan to play this move king b1. I mean, basically aim for a position where white's got no bad pieces, you know, no knight on a1 to worry about, and actually positions where black's king was always very exposed. And, you know, even if the engines consider this to be completely fine for black, I mean, it's always clear that, you know, who's going to have all the headaches and the worries and the difficult assessments, really, you know. And well, that's basically how it turned out, you know, to be. I also found it very, very interesting to have a look at, you know, what must have been Alireza's preparation. And I mean, I think, you know, the surprise to me really was, you know, that actually, you know, a plan like king h8 with the idea of h4, rook g8, it's, you know, it's really incredibly concrete. And I mean, you're kind of thinking, well, black's tucking up his king and that's fine, but actually, you know, there were really yeah, lines that really depended upon tempi. You know, if you know, black gives if black gives white you know, a free tempi, just goes rook b8, then all of a sudden white's winning after here, because fg is met by hg, you know. Whereas you know, in the way that it happened with f6, knight f5, yeah, black had the time to play fg, yeah, okay, loses the b pawn in return, but, you know, it's a really concrete and complex trade-off. And yeah, and what I just loved about the rest of the game was this idea of you know, the whole play switching. You would have put your money on white launching a kingside attack, and actually what you've ended up is white going for positional pressure on the queen side, and you end up with black playing moves like g4 and bishop g5 to f4, you know, really trying to make the most of an advantage on the king side. I mean, I love those games, you know, because they're always the most difficult, you know, when you show that enormous flexibility, and you know, halfway through the game you understand that you have to switch to the other flank. And well, very, very difficult for humans, and well, engines just seem to do that wonderfully. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed the video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which is full of great stuff like this. And otherwise, you know, thanks for watching, and keep tuned to the channel, because well, there's lots of exciting stuff at the TCEC coming up, League One, Division P, and the Super Final, of course. And well, this channel undoubtedly has the very most content on all of that. So thanks very much, and hope to see you around.